So, hello, BoatLife Life 2022. Welcome to the stage. Needs no introduction. Tom Cunliffe, thank you very much for joining us here today.
Well, I've never been to a boat show in Birmingham before, and this is quite a surprise.
Well, I think there's going to be lots more. We'll be back. So, Tom, I'm just going to wait for the clicker to go. James, are you going to help me with...
Got a real nice picture of yachting coming up here that I'm sure you'll hate, because is it coming up now or not? Not yet. We don't want it up yet because it's a bit of a zapper of a picture, and it has to come after the intro because we're going to have a little chat about what I'm talking about. And where it's going to go, I've got no idea, but I've got a few pictures and we'll see how it goes.
So we have Tom Cunliffe here, and Tom, when we talked about having our chat, you came up with just an idea of kind of what you wanted to base it on. And it's a very simple premises, Tom.
Yeah, well, I had to give a talk. And it's not really a talk. I understood this was an interview, Mark, you know, so it'll be a bit of a kick around. But so what was I going to sort of concentrate on, really, when we have this interview? And I thought, well, the weather's bound to be lousy. And why don't I say, what on earth are we doing here? And that's about the size of it. And we've got to put a picture up now.
So it just shows how much pull Tom has, because he ordered lousy weekend weather, and I think you've nailed that. Tom, behind you,
oh, there
is the shot.
Yeah.
And that is you at the helm.
Yeah, that's me in my hat. Now, you'll notice I'm not wearing a baseball hat. Baseball hats are hopeless. They blow off as soon as it gets windy. And my wife, Roz, always wears one, but she has it tied onto the neck of her jacket to use it. So I wear a flat Yorkshire ferreting cap, which I've found is the best garment for at sea. You can pull it down over your ears. It does not blow away. And when it gets wet, it's all wool, so it gets you even warmer. So that's me and my heavy weather kit.
That's top tip number one from the great Tom.
Top tip number one, go to the market and buy a cap. If it costs you more than a tenner, you're being seen off.
So, Tom, where are you here, and what are you sailing?
Well, as I say, I'm the character.
This looks like it's out in the Atlantic. We've got huge ocean railers.
But it's not, you see, and this is the People's Boat Show. This is not for heroes. This is for us, for ordinary people. And you'll be shocked to learn that this photograph was taken by my wife, Roz, who was peering out of the companionway of my boat, which is a 44-foot cutter built in America. It's a modern yacht. It's fiberglass. It's got a deep keel with the rudder hung on the back end of the keel. It's a very seaworthy, safe boat. It sails well, and I've got lovely sails on it, but it's a cruising boat, absolutely not a racing boat. But on this occasion, we are out with the family. The chap in the cockpit with me is my son-in-law, Dan, who is a man who is never perturbed by anything. I sometimes think there's something wrong with what's going around in his veins. He's so cool. He's amazing. And on this occasion, we were in Bembridge, which is a little harbour on the east side of the Isle of Wight. Some of you will know it, and it's one of my favourite places. And we had to sail back to Bewley. And we came out on the top of the tide, and we needed some ebb to get us down, some west-going tide to get us down to where we were going. If we'd left any later, there wouldn't have been enough water up on Bewley Bar to get back into the river. So we had to go when we had to go. And there was a lady in a boat on the marina. She was just across from me, and she said, "Oh, I wouldn't go out now if I were you." I said, "Well, it's, you know, the forecast's not too bad. It's 5 to 7. Which for us, you know, in the Solent is doable. It's not very nice, is it? But it's doable." She said, "No, but there's big squalls coming now that have caught up. They've caught the weatherman out. Look at this." And she had one of these amazing computer programs. I've never seen anything like it. And she was pointing, said, "Look, that's it. It's coming. It's coming your way. It'll be here in half an hour." I thought, well, I don't know so much about that. We'll go anyway. We've got a strong crew and a good boat. So off we went. And we're in the Solent, for goodness sake. So off we went, off-ride. The squall arrived, and it blew, and, you know, the world, I've got to stand up to tell you this, because, listen, you know, the world is, wherever you go, in yacht club bars and pubs by the waterfront, you'll always meet some guy who says, "Oh, it was blowing 50 knots across the deck." There's always one of them telling you an awful story, and you know it's probably a bit windy. Because I'm here to tell you, if it's blowing 55 knots across the deck, you can't stand up. And that's how you know it's blowing force 10. If you can stand up, it's all a joke. You just need to put another reef in and hope for the best. And on this occasion, the chances of us standing up were nil. I looked at the little dial. I've got little dials now that tell me how much it's blowing. I never had one of them before, but since I bought this yacht, I've got one. And it's amazing because it said 55 on it. It was nearly on the pin. And it really was blowing like the clappers. And while we were sitting there suffering this gruesome experience, the rain and the hail were coming horizontally and were cutting our faces. And you can see we are not having a nice time. And I thought to myself, it's not been a good season, this. There have been a few bad days, and there haven't been many good ones. And I haven't been out much, really. And here I am. I worked out how many thousands of pounds it was costing me to run this boat, how much it cost me to keep it on the marina, how much money I could earn with what the boat cost if I invested it wisely. And I thought, God, it's costing me £1,000 to be here and having this happen. What am I doing here? And that was the question. What am I doing here? And there have been many times when I've asked myself that question. I mean, one time in the North Atlantic Ocean when I was out with Ros, coming home from Canada, when we were both very young. I'll show you the boat in a bit. It's a wonderful boat, very old boat, built in 1903.
Here she is, Tom.
Oh, no, not this one.
Not that one.
No. Wait, go another one.
That one?
Go on. That's the one.
That one.
Yeah, we'll go back to that other one. No, this one was built in 1903. And to buy this boat and go sailing, we were very young. It was 1972, I think we bought her. And we'd be in our 20s. And we had no money, but we bought a house. We got a mortgage. We scraped together 700 quid and put that down, and some mug gave us a mortgage. And we had to get jobs. Now, I can't recommend that. If there's any young people here, you know, if people are trying to tell you to get a job, don't do it. There's no future in it. It holds you down, stops your creative flow. But we got jobs for 2 years, and the idea was we'd sell the boat, and houses were going up in value, sell a house, and we'd buy a boat with the equity. And we did. And we bought this lovely boat. This, for any connoisseurs here, is a real Colin Archer pilot cutter. Built 1903 in Norway, designed and built by the man himself for a Finnish pilot. And with her, we sailed away to South America and sailed all the way back some years later. And we left with 50 quid in a plastic bag. That's all we'd got. And a case of whiskey, which we sold on the dock in Salvador in Brazil. And when we got back, 2.5 years later, we'd had a whale of a time, and we had 75 quid in the same plastic bag. So we'd seen a 50%. That wasn't a bad deal, was it? We'd done all right. We still couldn't afford to go to the pub and buy a beer, but we had made some money. So it was all right. And coming home, we had a really serious dusting. And now we're going to have to... I'm not sure what we've got. We might have a picture of me mending a mainsail. Go on a few. Let's see what we get.
That's
Keep
you
going.
mending the
Keep
stern.
going. No, not that one.
That
Keep
one
going.
there.
Next one. No, damn, it's not there.
That's not
Okay,
there.
back we go.
We need to picture Tom mending a mainsail.
Yeah, picture me mending a mainsail. We got really blown out in the North Atlantic. And big storm. Waves high as houses, breaking over the boat, all that stuff. And the rudder we damaged our steering gear, and I'm hanging over the back trying to fix it. Ros is holding onto my feet to stop me falling over the back of the boat, because there wasn't any harnesses or anything in those days. And had things gone to the bad, there was no help, because we had no radio. You didn't in 1975. You were on your own. You were having a real adventure. If things went to the bad, you really did have to drown like a gentleman. That was it. So while we got it sorted out in the end, but we were sort of lying there under bare poles in the middle of the Atlantic with waves literally breaking over the boat. And I was lying at the bottom of the companionway, and I found myself, well, I wished I was somewhere else, really. What am I doing here? I said again. You know, I've mortgaged my life. I've left my career. I was going to be a barrister, by the way, but that's another story. I ran away to sea. And all this... for this misery. What on earth is going on? Well, we can get on to what's going on now, can't we?
Now, Tom, I've got a question just while we're on this windy weather shot.
Yeah.
Someone told me the difference between a true sailor and a fair weather sailor is if you lie in bed in a February gale and you're actually thinking, I want to be out there, you're a sailor. And if you think, oh, this is quite nice in front of the fire, all tucked up in the... So where do you sit on those two scales?
I'm tucked up in front of the fire watching Poldark.
How about you lot? Tucked up or out there in the gale? Definitely tucked up.
No, I don't want to be out there. I mean, if hard weather comes and there's no escape from it, you have to have your boat well found and take a pride in that. And there is sometimes a certain thrill in knowing that the weather's throwing at you its worst and your boat is surviving, and because you've been well prepared and have learnt what your options are, you can choose the right option and probably, with a bit of luck, come through unscathed. And the satisfaction of that is terrific. But it is only satisfaction. There's no pleasure in it. The pleasure comes in different areas for me.
So, Tom, you talk about preparation.
Yeah.
And you've obviously owned a fair few boats in your time. How much stall do you put into buying the right boat for the right place and the right kind of sailing you want to do?
Everything. It's all about buying the right boat.
Funny that, we're at a boat show.
Yeah, well, yeah. Yeah. So buying the right... People frequently write to Ros and me and say, what boat should I buy? I'm going off to sail on the... People don't talk about sailing across the Atlantic anymore. They sail about doing the arc, which is a bit strange to me, because to me, going to sea is about getting away from everybody and everything. We still don't have a long-range radio on our boat. If things go wrong, we're on our own. And we both carry in bus passes, but the boat's well prepared and we do our best. I think if you're going to buy a boat, whatever it is you're going to do, the really vital thing is to define your objectives. It's like a military operation. An old soldier once said to me, whatever you're going to do, define your objectives. See what you want the boat to do. See how much money you've got. Take a serious look at yourself and see what you're really good for. And nowadays, as I say, I'm carrying a bus pass. I'm a big, strong chap. I look all right, but I'm falling to bits, really. And I've got arthritis. So I'm not the man I was. And 10 years ago, or 12 years ago or something, Ros and I sold our last gaff cutter and bought the Bermudan yacht. And it was the right boat to buy at the time, and she's still the right boat for what we need. We can afford her, just. It's always just with affording a boat, you know. You never can really manage it. You always think, oh, God, I've got to have that one, but it's 15 grand more than I can really got. I can never justify
Tom,
that.
was that the case when you bought this?
I never bought this one. I put
Stole
this up.
it.
Yeah, well, more or less, actually. I put this up because, well, there's a little story attached to this. You see, this is the answer about why we do it, actually. We've been rabbiting on about why you shouldn't do it. And this is
don't
why...
forget, the whole conversation here is, why do we do this?
Well, this is why we do it. And when I was a little boy, 14 years old, I lived in Stockport, just up the way here, back end of Manchester. And my parents had never been sailing. Nobody knew anything about sailing in my family. And my dad was a frustrated adventurer. He'd been through the war, he'd all sorts of things had befallen him, but he'd never been able to organise and pay for his own adventure. And so it remained. But he encouraged me to look around and do things. I used to go up walking on Kinder Scout when I was a little boy, aged 12. They put you on the train and off you went. You got your boots on and your ordnance survey map, and you did it. People don't seem to do that with kids anymore. Wonderful to hear from Katie just now. Absolutely wonderful to hear that young people are still getting out there and getting stuck in. Well,
for those that missed it, Katie McCabe just sailed round Britain at the age of 14. So if you missed that talk, you missed something special. Go and see her boat. Katie's here at the show. Tom.
Absolutely right. And I was 14 when this experience happened to me, because I'd got no background at all. And my dad said, do you fancy going sailing? And I said, well, yeah, I do, really. I'd love to go sailing, because I'd been reading books about sailing. I'd read Joshua Slocum and people like that. And I was quite captivated. And he said, well, listen, I will hire you and your little mate up the road, who's also 14. Me and his dad will hire you a boat on the Norfolk Broads. It'll be a sailing yacht and there'll be no engine. And he said, we'll put you on the train at Edgeley Station in Stockport, and you can go sailing for a week, and you can bring the boat back in one piece, and it'll be all right. And that's what they did. They put us on the train. They gave us a book by a man called Peter Heaton. It was called Teach Yourself Sailing or something like that. And we sat on the train and we read this and we thought, well, this sounds like a bit of all right. And we arrived in the station at St Olave's in the southern Norfolk Broads. We walked to the boatyard, and that's the boat that we went sailing on when we were 14. And we read the book, How to Do It, and it said, we were lucky, because we started off with the wind blowing off the bank. That was a bit of luck, wasn't it? Imagine if it had been the other way around. We'd never gone anywhere, would we? My life could have been different. But the Lord sent me an offshore wind. And so we took the back line off, and we stood for head to wind, like it said in the book. And the first thing I did was drop the jib shackle over the board, the tack shackle for the jib. We thought, well, that's only a little sail. That won't be important. So we put that back in the forecastle, and we pulled the mainsail up, and it's a gaff sail. And I remember seeing this sail. It was so huge. It looked enormous, because I'd never seen a sail from underneath before. And if you're sailing with people who haven't gone sailing, if some of your mates come with you, tell them, when the sail goes up, it's going to look enormous, and it's going to make a lot of noise if it's a windy day. I wasn't expecting that. Bang, bang, crash, wobble, sheet banging about, blocks. Dear me, it was quite alarming. But we got it up, and we let go the line, shoved the bow off, and we went off down the river. And suddenly, everything went quiet, and the boat surged away. And I had my hand on the tiller, and I realized that what I was doing would steer the boat, and the reeds were bowing in the wind, and the little birds were flying, and I saw the clouds scudding across the sky, and I never, ever wanted to do anything else. That was a magic moment for the little boy of 14, and that sealed it for me. Twice a year, our dads paid for us to go back, because they reckoned it had done us good. Much better than going on a sail training ship and polishing brass. We'd actually learned how to sail, and we did, because these boats had no engine. And that was it. So it worked really well for us. I went to university, sailed dinghies, really learned how to sail then. Otherwise, you were swimming. That was great. And then I left, and one thing led to another. I ran away to sea. I left the bar and didn't become a barrister. And then I met my wife. And then we had the house buying and all that happened. So that was how it happened. But there was that magic moment. And that's the one day in 10. You go out there 10 days and it's god awful and you wonder why you're bothering. And then you have this magical day when God smiles on you and the wind blows just where you want it and the tide serves and you arrive perhaps in a foreign country where people speak strange tongues and you've got there on your own, not turfed off an aeroplane with a red ribbon around you and some guy stamping your passport. You are in charge under God, and that's the way to do it. That's the magic. Now,
Tom, I have in my mind, you've been painting a picture here. The Royal Yachting Association, the RYA, do an amazing job of lots of incredible publications, courses, your day skippers, all that sort of stuff. But I would love to see the Learn to Sail Tom Cunliffe way. Unofficial, Dad buy you a railway ticket, push you out, off you go. So just tell us, if you were giving, say, someone like Katie advice, if you would go back to your 14-year-old self, what advice would you give yourself?
I would say, if you've got no background and you've never been sailing and your parents don't go sailing, try to find people who know what they're doing. It's not always easy to do that. You might have to present yourself at a sailing club and listen to people who know or think they know. They probably do know. They're going to know more than you anyway. And listen, and don't have any ego at all. Just soak up the information. Read everything you can. There is so much to read, and it's not all technical books. A lot of it is books about people who've just got in a boat and gone sailing. And you'd be surprised how many people actually do that and do it successfully. I once read a poem by a man called, God, what's his name? An Irishman. And it contained all sorts of wonderful things, but it had this great line, the sea, good to gamblers. And you know, most of the time it is. There's another side to that, you know, Mark, because when I was in America as a relatively young man and I was a hand on a big schooner, the captain of the schooner, this was back in the 70s, the captain of the schooner was an old man, but he had been a dory fisherman on the Grand Banks from the sailing schooners in the 1930s, and there was nothing he didn't know about the sea and about schooners. And I said to him, well, you know, if we go around this way around the buoys. It'll probably be all right. We've got to, and he said, well, I don't know about that. He said, I think we should do it like this. And I said, well, you've got to be optimistic. And he looked me in the face and he said, listen, he said, son, he said, the sea bottom is paved with the bones of optimists. So there you are. What sort of sailor are you? Are you like the Grand Banksman who knew the real truth, or are you like the poet who said the sea is good to gamblers? Well, I've been a gambler, and the sea has been very good to me. But I've learnt not to be an optimist while I'm gambling. Size up the odds properly. Make a good decision.
Well, you've made lots of good decisions, and we move on to another boat that you've been involved with. Tell us about this. This looks like we're down in the West Country somewhere.
We're coming out of Foy on this boat, and we've just sailed in after a quite unusual voyage. This boat, this was another boat we sold a house to buy. When we sold the first boat, I got a job. But it wasn't a bad job. I was a sailing instructor at the National Sailing School in Cowes, Isle of Wight, that used to be a proper government institution. And it was a wonderful job. We got good money and rotten working hours. But we met a lot of nice people, and we all became better sailors. Because, if you really want to know how to do something, you better teach it. I might sound absolutely cockeyed, but you get intelligent people go sailing, and they ask you difficult questions. And you've got to come up with an answer. So teaching sailing is good. So did that for 4 years. Ros ran a rather nice house on the back of the Wight, which we bought with a socking great mortgage. She ran a bed and breakfast institution. And after 4 years of that, she'd had enough. And I was burning out as an instructor. So we thought, well, let's sell up and go sailing again. So we sold the house to raise some funds, and we bought this boat. This is a Bristol Channel pilot cutter built 1911. It was the original boat, 35 tons, 51 feet on deck, 65 overall, and we sailed away.
What was her name, Tom?
Her name was Hirta, H-I-R-T-A, named by the Earl of Dumfries, who owned her in the 1930s, after the main island of the St Kilda Group, which he also owned. So she'd had an illustrious past. It was a shame she had to go working class at the end, but we did some wonderful sailing in her. And that year, we sailed her to Norway, then we sailed her to Faroes, Iceland, Greenland, Newfoundland, and finally to America, the West Indies, the Azores, and home again. And that took about 3 years, and we had a wonderful trip. And the boat absolutely did us proud. And our little girl was 5 when we left, I think 4 when we left, and about 7 when we got home. She'd never been to school. And when we finally sent her to school up in Yorkshire, because that was where we did well with the boat, actually. It was like the old story, We left with no money. We left with a £2,000 overdraft, came home having... We'd cleared our... I'll have to wait for this. We'd cleared our debts, and we came home, and we had just about enough money to put a deposit down on a house. So we bought a 2 up, 2 down in Yorkshire, where we had a grand 5 years, and our daughter went to school. And when she went to school, she discovered that having been taught by my wife for 3 years, she was way, way, way ahead on reading, writing, and arithmetic. It took 2 years for her to slow down and let the rest catch up. And after that, it was a struggle uphill, like it always is with everybody else. But she had a flying start, and it's quite interesting, isn't it? 1-to-1 tuition, 2 hours every day, in the morning, come day, go day, come gale, snow or shine. And it paid off.
Well, I'm sure you learn a lot on the sea. That is such a seaworthy boat. There's a reason why they were like that. Nice big proud bows to get out in the Bristol Channel. Beautiful. Bit of maintenance here, Tom.
Well, yeah, this is another day when you wonder why you bother. We sailed the boat. This is the stern of the pilot cutter.
Was this last week?
No. Well, as you see, a fine figure of a man. There's been some difficulty about my hair, unfortunately, but shortly after this, we had rather a bad time. My hair went white in 6 months. But it's nice having soft white hair, because in bars in France, beautiful women run their hands through it. It doesn't happen here. A grave disappointment, but, that's how it is.
That's an open invitation, ladies.
Don't do it. So, when we got there, we found that although we'd had the boat surveyed, I was rowing under the stern in mid-punt, and I looked up at the stern chock. This is the great big piece of wood that goes across the boat that the planks are attached to, and it didn't look too good to me. And I went and got a screwdriver and poked it in. It went up to the handle. So the stern was basically rotten, and Ros remarked, "Do you know, when you think what we've come through, it's amazing the strength in rotten wood." And it is. But the boat held together, but we had to redo the stern. We'd no money at that time, so I had to do it myself. And you can see that I'm learning new skills here. And it did us proud. But I did wonder, you know, what sort of luck I'd got to find that the boat was really quite rotten. But I had a wonderful spiritual experience while I was doing this job. Inside there, if you take the new wood away, you can see a great big piece of wood that comes up from the stern of the boat inside that counter, and it's called the horn timber. And it's big, it's that sort of size, about 6 inches square. And when I started to dig in there, I thought, God, the horn timber's going to be rotten, and it's curtains. I couldn't see how I could possibly, I didn't have the skill to replace it and had no money, so I didn't know what was going to happen. And when we revealed the horn timber, the end grain of the horn timber, which is where the water goes in and gets sucked in and makes it go rotten, the end grain was staring at me. And the guy who built the boat on the beach in Cornwall, not in some fancy boatyard, on the beach in Cornwall in 1911, realizing what might happen, had covered the end grain of the horn timber with pitch. And it was sound as the day it was built. And my heart warmed to that man. I don't know who he was, but he'd thought about me, a man not even born when he built the boat, not born for 40 years till after he'd built the boat, but he thought about me. And I thought, well, that's what we should do in life. Think about the geezers, think who's coming after us, and give them a fair chance. So wasn't that wonderful? The boat really taught me something. She did more than just teach me how to sail, but we certainly had bad weather in her. We came through a named hurricane in her, Hurricane Klaus, on our way to the West Indies from the United States. And she was magnificent.
That is a wonderful story, and certainly just keeps on harking back to why we do this, you know, because it's not just what we learn on the water. It's sometimes on the land that we can get great takeaways. So, big old waves here, Tom.
Yeah, I put this slide in because I didn't know where this chat was going to go, Mark, quite honestly.
Anywhere you want to go, Tom.
Well, this is just another picture of nasty weather, really, and this is another what are we doing here story. But this is a picture on the stern of the boat that came after the pilot cutter. This was our last gaff cutter. We had it built for us because we had some money by now, and we had it built for us in Canada. And we're coming round Finisterre, coming back from North Africa. And it's blowing, it's not that bad. It's probably blowing about 40 knots, but for the whole gale, but nothing really serious. And the self-steering gear is doing a great job. For the technically interested in self-steering gears, I'll just tell you about this. That's a pendulum servo gear, a wind pilot. Normally, it would be driven by a wind vane. When it got really extreme, because the boat was quite unbalanced, she carried a lot of weather helms, sometimes it just got too much. And what I used to do, I got a little cheap tiller mate, a little cheapo thing that you put on a small cruising yacht, like a Westerly Centaur or something like that. This is a 22-ton gaff cutter. If you'd put it on the tiller, this tiller mate, it would have eaten it and spat the bits over the side. It wouldn't have even looked at it. But what I did, I had it driving the pendulum servo instead of the wind vane, and it was powerful enough for that. And it steered the boat through anything. And so here it is doing its wonderful work. And we've got it doesn't look much that, but it's a 30-foot sea coming up behind, and the boat's rollicking along. And actually, she's doing all right. And I'm quite happy, because we're going downwind and we're not overloaded. So I'm actually not thinking, what am I doing here? I'm thinking, that's one of those days when you think, we've got this right. The boat's all right. She's eating this up. God bless us all.
Tom, you've touched on something here that we all like buying gizmos, and we come to boat shows and we get told a little about the thing that you need. You're showing a lot of invention here and a lot of thinking out of the box. Do you think that's a great skill that one needs to go sailing? And definitely, I think, should be encouraged.
Yeah, absolutely, Mike. I think if you go offshore, go away on your own, get out the Solent, things are going to break. things always break on boats. They do, don't they? It's something to do with boats. They're always breaking. And very often, you can't buy the bit you want. It's not like a bit falls off your Ford Focus and you go down the motor factory and get stung and get another one and bolt it on. It's not like that. You very often have to improvise. And we've learnt to improvise. And with those big gaff cutters, it was quite amazing what you used to find in the bilges. Whenever I was walking around a boatyard, you know, you'd see stuff lying around on the floor. There's always things lying around on the floor. You know that, don't you? Because when you drive your car into the boatyard, you always come out with a puncture because somebody's left a nail lying around and poof, that's you. So pick them up. Be tidy. But don't throw them in the bin. Put them in your pocket. A broken pump. Hang on to it. Any old thing. A piece of broken shackle that hasn't got a pin. Put that in as well. You need a really comprehensive bits box if you're going off around the world, because you never know. You just don't know what you're going to need. And something that you can't imagine would ever be useful, like an old motorbike inner tube or something, chuck that in as well. They're great. You can fabricate something with these bits and pieces. And you don't have to be a great engineer. I mean, I'm not. I have a vintage car. I maintain it myself. It hasn't been in a garage for 12 years, and I'm proud of that. But I'm particularly proud of it because I don't come from an engineering background. My father was an intellectual. My daughter is an intellectual. And although she's very much involved in our trade, but she's an academic, really. She's a good helmsman, though. But that's another story. And the thing is, my dad couldn't change a light bulb, really. And I didn't grow up. I never did anything with a spanner in my hand until I was 18, and I needed a motorbike to get to university. And the motorbike broke, and I had to fix it. And oh dear, suddenly I was having to do it. And it's been like that all my life. I've been struggling uphill to learn how to do things, so it's not easy for me. Some people are naturals, and I've got friends who make me ashamed. They're so wonderful. But I struggle through. And when you're out there on your own, there's nobody to help you. There's no AA man, there's nothing. It's you and nobody else. And if you've done it right and you haven't got a radio, you really are on your own. You won't be able to ring up mum at home and say, how am I going to fix this, like I see people doing now. Do it yourself. But you've got to have the clobber. So gather a load of stuff. You wouldn't imagine what was in the bilge of the pilot cutter. It was shocking, really. But it was all good because it was all below the centre of gravity. So it all held the boat stay upright. It was good. So, yeah, thinking outside the box and fixing things.
Well, you must have learned a lot of skills from engineering to a little bit of wiring,
well, yeah.
a bit of pumping.
Yeah, you do. You do. You pick it up as you go along. And, well, as I say, I do I do all my engineering on the boat as well. Gearbox fell off the back of the engine well, it didn't fall off the back of the engine. The gearbox packed up, and we had to replace it. And as I say, I'm getting old and a bit stiff, and I'm not broke these days, so I thought, well, I'll get the yard to do that. Well, the yard took it off. Then we found we couldn't get another, and the yard went on holiday. We couldn't get one in the whole of Europe. We were in Denmark when this happened. I'm very proud to say we sourced one in dear old Blighty. There wasn't one to be had from Greece to the Urals. Couldn't be had, but we got one. It took 3 weeks to deliver it, and it cost as much to deliver as it cost to buy. But when it arrived, there was only us. So Ros and I and a mate who lived down the dock on a boat, an Italian chap, grand man, we put it on and hooked it all up because there's nobody else. And that's the attitude. And if you're not very good with engines, well, it's time you were, really. Go and learn and get stuck in.
Now, Tom, I want to leave some time for our wonderful audience here to ask you some questions, because I know that... so tell us a little bit about this, but just have a little think of a question you might want to ask Tom in a minute.
Well, this picture here, I've put this up because on account of my acquaintance with gaff rig and these cutters and things that I've sailed, I've written a textbook about sailing gaff rig boats. And it turns out that this textbook is generally appreciated, and it's on most of the big yachts, that are the big classic yachts that are sailing. And as a result, I get invited to go on some of these boats, and that is, you know, you think, what's this all for? Well, I tell you what, if you keep going, sooner or later, and you don't give up, you get to sail on some really amazing vessels. And this is Eleonora, probably, I think, one of the biggest racing schooners in the world. She's a dead-set replica of Westward, which was a boat designed by Nat Herreshoff. She's 160 feet long, I think, designed by Nat Herreshoff in 1906, I think. And she stormed across the Atlantic with her owner and his men. And when she arrived, she went racing with all the established authorities over here. And she beat everybody. And the best bit of it all was that she went to Germany and she raced at Kiel and she beat the Kaiser. Yes, let's hear it for the Westward. And her skipper was a Scotsman called Charlie Barr. And Charlie Barr was a hard-driving man. And he raced across the Atlantic in another big schooner, the three-master Atlantic, to win the first big, or the second big schooner race across the Atlantic before World War I. And they drove like madmen on that race. There was a lot of wind, and they practically drove them under. They were going so fast. And in the middle of the race, she was going like thunder in the night with everything set, topsails up and the whole shooting match. And the boat was roaring along. She set a record that wasn't beaten until our time. Even the big trimarans could never beat her record. She was so fast. And she roaring along. And the owner, who was on board, unusually, because mostly these chaps stayed at home and just bet on the boats. But this chap fancied himself as a bit of a sportsman. And he came up and he saw what was going on. Barr was on the wheel. And he said to Charlie Barr, he said, you'll have to heave to, Captain. We can't go on like this. It's no good. I can't risk the ship and the men. And Charlie Barr stared him down. And he said, get below, sir, he said. You've hired me to win this race, and I'm going to win it, whether you're with me or not. Get below. And he sent the owner below, and he whopped them all. So and he whopped the Kaiser as well. So we like Charlie Barr. He was a good man. And this was one of his boats. And to sail on such a vessel and see the young men, the young crew and the young women who sail these boats, these are prime seamen. They're wonderful. You just look at what they're doing, and I'm in awe of them, really. It's fantastic, inspiring. So to sail on a boat like that is 15 knots down the back of Antigua. Little boats scattering in front of you, all the racing yachts beaten to pieces as the Westward thunders through.
Wonderful, inspiring stuff. Thank you so much, Tom. Have we got a couple of questions from the audience? I'm sure we have. Anything from Kate? No? Some advice, I'm sure, later. Sir?
In your early days, when you were sailing off to these far-flung places, how did you manage when you were coming across the new ports and what have you to make sure that the boat and yourself were safe?
In a new port? Well, good question. It wasn't always. In those days, very often there wouldn't be any other yachts in the port. So you would have to make yourself known to the port authorities. Generally speaking, you'd anchor off. Make yourself known to the port authorities, tell them what the position was, do any customs formalities that had to be done, and then ask around, find somebody who knew, get a feel for the place, really. And if you were in doubt, you just had to keep somebody on board the boat or get well locked up. Have a dinghy that nobody's going to want. That's important. You know, smart dinghies are not a great idea, especially with fancy outboards, but there was nothing like that in those days. I had a little clinker pram and a pair of oars, that was it. So that nobody wanted that, so that was easy. Today, keep your ear to the ground. Listen to what other people are saying, because there will almost certainly be other yachts around. Even in Spitsbergen, there are yachts queuing up now. So it's a very different world. You can find out by listening what other people have got to say. And generally speaking, it's okay, but there are places where it actually can be quite nasty. So, yeah.
So, Tom, you've given us some great advice, and you just said keep listening and taking advice. You've written some wonderful articles. You're an incredible journalist yourself. You have a podcast. Tell the audience where we can get a little bit more of Tom Cunliffe.
Well, that's very kind of you, because actually, as usual, I get carried away and I forget what I'm supposed to be talking about. I don't know whether Ros is here, but she'll be shaking her fist at me now. Because
long-suffering Ros here on the left. There she is.
This is it, Ros. This is where we get it in. So, what we did, I do a lot of lecturing and go around clubs and talking and things. And it does, in the wintertime, it supplies a nice little bit of extra income for us. And it fell apart because of COVID. So what we did, we started an online, I don't know what you call it really, it's a sort of Tom Cunliffe club. And what you do, you stump up 15 quid. It's the price of a round of drinks, isn't it? Probably not even that here. And you get all manner of things. You just go to tomcunliffe.com. easy. TomCunliffe, all one word, .com, and follow the instructions. I think it says join now or something. And you get a massive articles that you won't find anywhere else. There are really, I think there's 60 or 70 of them now. Half of them are technical and half of them are inspirational. You also get a load of videos which are not available generally to my YouTube channel, which, and some of them are very useful. There's a fantastic series of rope work videos. And if you're not sure about how to splice a bit of braid line, have a look at that and find out. There's some really good videos about tides and tidal height calculations. So if you're doing your day skipper, you want to go there and get that, because it's not really as difficult as everybody seems to make out. It can't be, because I had to have 2 goes at O-level maths before they'd let me into university. And I've written a book about astronavigation. So don't let anybody tell you it's difficult. It isn't. The whole thing is not rocket science. It's really not difficult. And sailing a boat's easy. Just remember a few basic things. It's all there. Anyway, so, yeah, if you want to know more about what we do, you can find me on YouTube, of course. But the best thing is to go to tomcunliffe.com, bang the button, stump up your money, and Ros will be a happy girl. And how did I do? There you go.
Now, Tom, I've got a question that's come in from online from a Dave Nichols. He says, if you didn't moor your boat in the British Isles, where would your home port be?
Well, I don't.
He's already made that decision.
Yeah, I have, actually. I keep my boat in Denmark. And she lives...
Is this Denmark here?
Yeah, here we are. That's Sweden, actually. That's my boat. And that's where we go cruising most summers. That's in Sweden. It's about a week's sail from where we keep the boat. And it's just lovely, because the plan now, what we do, we keep the boat in Denmark. I'll tell you why in a minute. We sail on her for 3 months every summer, and then we put her away and walk away, and we don't have a boat for 9 months of the year. But for 3 months, we have total commitment. We live on board, and we can go where we like. So that's great. Now, the reason I keep the boat in Denmark is quite simple. Well, there are 2 reasons. First reason is we got sick of traipsing up and down the North Sea every year from the south coast of England to find somewhere we wanted to sail. Because we don't like going south, because there's a lot of people down there, and it doesn't half get hot in July and August. It's a misery, really. It's too much. If you go north, in Sweden, you get fabulous weather. Behind Scandinavia, in May, June and July, it's glorious. It's fresh water, so you don't have to keep washing your boat down. If you go swimming, it's quite nice. It's not expensive ashore. Berthing is peanuts compared with what it is here. Tying my boat up in a south coast marina when I'm cruising, 70 quid. Thank you very much, sir. And do you want power? If I pay 25 quid in Sweden, I think I'm being seen off. So there you are. And so that's one reason, because we love sailing there. We also like sailing in Norway, and Denmark's gorgeous. The other reason is this, and it's pure finance. Keeping my boat in a typical marina on the south coast, which is where I live. So it's got to be somewhere handier to get the benefit. It's going to cost me, if I'm lucky, it'll cost me 7 or 8 grand. Well, you know, I'm a working man. That's too much. It just sticks in my throat, and I'm not sure I probably could find the money. In Denmark, plus, all winter long, she's either sitting on a patch of damp gravel in the Hamble River, getting rain and muck thrown on her, or she's in the marina, chafing away on her lines, rubbing her fenders. In Denmark, we pull her out of the water, whip the mast out. It doesn't cost any more than it would here, probably a bit less. And she's put into this warm, dry shed by this team of professionals under Anders. And Anders and his men put her in there like she's their own boat. If you drop your sandwich on the floor in the shed, you can pick it up and eat it. It's so clean. And the boat sits in there. It never gets below 12 degrees. The varnish is perfect. The cupboard doors don't jam. It's lovely. And when I come back in the spring, she's ready to go. So, and it costs change out of £3,000. So there you go. That's why I keep my boat in Denmark.
There we go. Well, I'm sure you still love your sailing in the UK.
I do. I still do the Shell Channel pilot. We'll be down here summer after next to spend the whole summer in the English Channel, which I love, doing another edition of the pilot book, which I do for the channel.
Now, Tom, when I talked to you first about having our chat here at BoatLife Live, you said, let's just talk about why do we do this? Why do we go sailing? Why do we get on the boat? Why do we go? out on the water, whether it's a canal barge or a sailing boat. I think you have given us 101 reasons why we do this. Please, ladies and gentlemen, here at BoatLife Live, please put your hands together. The great Tom Cunliffe. Thank you very much, Tom.